Hi everyone, this is a bit of a commentary on what I tend to do at the beginning of classes and talking to students as a group and talking to them in such a way that I think in actual fact has the effect of bringing us all together, realising we're on the same page, but also bringing kids' awareness onto things about making sure that we're able to move forward and providing a bit of inspiration or providing a bit of motivation for them to get started on. Every day I start with something like this. I take the view that very often schools will run the big study camp, they'll get the big motivator in, and then that motivator will stay for a day and the kids think it's great, the teachers think it's great, and then the school forgets all about it. I think that what we find is that kids are quite fragile around knowing where they're at. So for example, yesterday I was talking to kids about how it's very easy to just imagine, for example, in Year 12, that it's just another school year. It's just panning out Monday to Friday, we do this, we do that. And it's very hard to forget that it's a highly significant year for our HSC students. So what are some of the things that I like to talk about at the beginning of a class to gather people in, to provide a bit of inspiration? And I would have to say, I'm not saying that it's a dead winner all the time, but I'm always surprised at the number of kids who are sitting looking at me with their mouths open. Hello, I need to be reminded of this. So what are some of the things we talk about? I try not to talk about the same thing all the time, although inevitably I do. I'm always, in some way or another, getting to the point where I'm saying how absolutely crucial it is to submit work and as a means of building a skill, and that's what we're talking about a lot. So, for example, very often I might use a simple anecdote like someone like Picasso. I might say Picasso was regarded as the 20th century's greatest painter, and often they use the term genius. And I would always say to the kids, well, does anyone know when he got his first set of paints? And I'd say, well, of course they don't know that. So I'd say, well, he was 3. What did his father do? His father was an artist. What happened between the ages of 7 and 12? He was tutored by Spain's foremost portrait painter, and then of course has his first exhibition in Paris when he's 18. It's told that, we're all told that he's an overnight genius. Well, obviously he's been painting for 15 years. That hardly quantifies that. So use that analogy to talk to kids about, hello, we can all do it, but most of it is grunt and hard work, and we need to think that way, and aligning that with ideas about the only way we move forward is on the basis of our failures, and failure is a very important part of the learning process. So trying to couch things along those lines. I've got a number of books in our library that will actually talk about things like that, and you probably notice that around the office we've got quotations because we actually believe that we all need inspiration, not only the kids but we ourselves do. So some of the other things I like to talk about are obviously the idea of the importance of practice, just mentioned that. I've got a memory graph that talks about how easy it is to forget information over a block of time, so that helps to explain to kids why information seems to disappear out rather than them imagining that they're dumb. It's simply a case of use it or lose it. If you're interested in some of these ideas, I've got a wonderful, very, very simple book called Accelerative Learning. All these information, all these sorts of things sit on a page. You know, the power of visualization, the importance of drinking a lot of water, all those kinds of things that make a successful study environment. They actually suggest that studying under fluoro lights is not a good idea, but there's nothing we can do about that one. Talk about the importance of submitting. Often talk about how many weeks to go. Okay guys, we're in week 6. We all know that your assessment task is going to be delivered next week. How far are we on that EBT? Because remember, when the assessment task comes along, we want to make sure that the EBT is perfectly in place, because we know that it's going to be aligned to your assessment task. So have we done it? Is it ready to start using to an actual fact construct your essay? We've got students in my groups at the moment who simply they do cuts and pastes out of their EBT, drop them into the essay page, and then start assembling their information on that. Almost, so their first draft, in a sense, is looking a little bit like playing with a jigsaw puzzle, and a lot of kids like that. So I think that if kids are sort of given those options and told those stories, it encourages them to think about ways of doing things like that perhaps themselves. Last week, for example, obviously this will cause this to be dated, but I talked about the Academy Awards. Obviously trying to make a point about the Academy Awards in the same way as I'm trying to make a point about programs like MasterChef. Sorry, but I always have a bit of a political agenda. So one of the students, I said to one of the students, so who won the Academy Awards? Given the answer, what did she wear? Given the answer to that, what jewellery did she wear? Given the answer to that, and then I asked a question, how many times did she have to go for a piss before she accepted the award? And one of the kids, quite nonplussed, said to me, that information is not available yet. So trying to make the point about how we have this enormous capacity to accumulate all the stuff that actually generates no value to us. So always making fun of things like MasterChef. I realise that's what I do. Some people might think that that's silly, but I like to talk about the way other things shape agendas and how we claim that kids say, well, look, I can't think, I don't know how to do it, and yet they know this enormous detail about those kinds of things. So in my view, anything topical is worth bearing down on what we're doing. A couple of weeks ago, there's a very interesting series of articles on is the new generation somewhat narcissistic? So I had a bit of a discussion about that just to sort of generate something that meant that we were doing something else here before we led it into, and obviously we're doing a lot of Pride and Prejudice at the moment, Faye Weldon, so talking about narcissism in the light of that. So I think a lot of analogy is really good and very stimulating for these kids who I think we retain that wider agenda. We are professional teachers, and there are lots of other things that we can say about text and the way it incorporates the rest of the world. That's probably all I want to say about that, but I do believe it's a really good idea to start a lesson in that way. I think it humanises us as people. It creates the idea that we are personalities. We do have points of view. We're real people. We're not in the culture of celebrity. In fact, we spend a lot of time attacking the culture of celebrity, but I think it's a really good idea to personalise things, be willing to have a bit of a joke with them all the way through the lesson, but always feeding back into it. So when they walk out of the office, I'm always pleased when so many of our students make a particular point to know that they come up and they say goodbye, see you next week, folks, see you, and I really like that because they feel that I've really engaged with them at a personal level as well. As I say, we're not in a position here to tell you how to introduce a lesson, but I do think that in terms of creating that sort of inspirational idea, that's what we should be doing. Thank you.